Hi, it's Terry, and as you can see, the benches are starting to get really full. Now this is a follow-up vid to the CZ250 471 crank removal, and I'll just show you all the parts I've selected which I'm going to use over the coming weeks, because this 250, it's actually going to be converted to 350. So let's have a look at the cases anyway first, and then we'll go on to the gearbox, cylinders and cranks, and we'll have a look at the differences, because I've had quite a few questions about the differences with these 250s, 350s. So here's the cases anyway. This is the 250 471, and hopefully you'll be able to see, basically it's the rear mount. You can see how narrow that is compared to the 350. Now this is 634 cases, and this is one side of the top mount and there's the other, so it's quite wide compared to the CZ471, and then the rear is quite wide as well. So these cases are not going to fit in the 471 frame, so you can't just put a 350 engine in. So there's a couple of options. One, convert the 250 to 350. The other one is completely change the rear mounts to fit the engine in, which is quite difficult, because if you've got a 250 you'll know what the rear mount's like. It's attached to the swinging arm and that. So quite a few difficulties there. But anyway, what we're going to do with this, we're actually going to convert the engine anyway. So to do that, the actual stroke is going to be changed. So we're going to put the 350 crank in these cases, and these are the ones I've selected to use, because if you remember I said I've stripped 3 and I've selected the best parts out of all of them and a few spares as well. Looking at this is a 559 Jawa 250. Now this is going to be another project for a friend. Now it'll be the autumn when I start this, but I will video it. But going over to the parts anyway, here's the crankshafts. Now if we look at the first one, this is the one we're going to actually use. This is a 350. This one is the 250. Now I'm not sure if you can see very well actually on the video, but you can see the big end pin there. I'm not sure whether you can see that. And if you look at the 250, so it's much lower, it's closer to the actual journal. That's because the strokes are different. So the 350 is 65mm stroke, and this is 58mm. Everything else is the same. So this is the crankshaft that I pulled out in the last vid. As you can see, it's all rusted up, actual conrod seized. But this one here has been fully rebuilt, new conrods, bearing, this part of the labyrinth. So that crank then is going to go in those cases. And if we go on to look at the cylinders, now I've got a 350 and a 250 here, so you can see the difference. In fact, what I'm going to do, I'm going to put these on another bench and get the tripod so we can have a closer look. So just so you can see the difference. Right, so I've got both cylinders there now. On your left would be the 250, and on the right hand side is the 350. Now we'll have a close look at these. I'll get the steel rule and we'll have a look at the measurements. Right, so first thing you notice here, I'm hoping you actually can see clearly on the video. If you look at this cylinder, the 250, at the moment it's actually 7mm lower. So if I put a flat over the top like that, now you won't be able to see the measurements obviously, but if you put like a straight edge across the top, put the steel rule, you'll find that 7mm difference from the 250 and 350. Now the other thing is though, if you look at the 250 down here, it's actually 3.5mm lower than the 350. So when you fit them to the crankcases, this 250 one will be actually 3.5mm higher, like so. which means when it's fitted there'll be a 3.5mm difference at the bottom and 3.5mm at the top once it's fitted in the casing like that. Now I've got two pistons, a 350 and a 250. Now we're going to have a close look at the transfer cutaway. Right, so we've looked at the cylinders then, the 250 and 350, the 7mm differences in the stroke. And here's the pistons there. Now what I've actually done at the minute, I've joined them both together at the small end boss. So we can just see these transfer port windows on the pistons. Now if you look at the 350 this side, you can see that the bottom of this cutaway is actually 3.5mm higher than the 250, and that's when they're together. But what I'll do is I'll take them apart, take the pin out. But if they were sitting in the cylinder on their own crankshafts like so, then the 350 piston on the right would sit 3.5mm higher. So then the distance from the bottom of this cutaway to that would be 7mm. So remembering the left is a 58mm stroke and the right hand 350 is 65. So if I placed them together in the cylinder, the 250 would sit 3.5mm lower, like I said, and then 7mm difference there. But as they travel down the cylinder, the 350 will travel 65mm and then the 250 will travel 58, which then at the bottom dead centre the 250 piston will be sitting higher. And if you look at the ports in there, these transfer cavities or cutaways, they're actually equal, they actually line up them perfectly, which is ideal because the crankcase cavities for the transfer are actually the same, so you can use the 350 cranking. So what we'll do now, we'll look at the gearbox, but we'll just look at the basics just to get familiar with it, and then when the cases go together we'll look in some depth. Right, so looking at the gearbox then, as you can see there, we've got the main shaft at the bottom and the top is the lay shaft, and at the back we've got the selector mechanism and the selector forks. Now when it comes to putting the gearbox together in the casings, we can go into much more detail on how all this goes together, but just a brief look at the gearbox today. Now the main shaft here, just take this end off first. Now this gear here, this is fixed, it's part of the shaft, and then the gear next to it is secured by a clip so it can't move left or right, and then the other gear that moves along the spline shaft, and then the end one just spins freely, and this can engage into it like so and locks the shaft. So you've got the fixed gear there. Now if you look at the lay shaft on the opposite side, you've got a fixed one there also, and again this one's secured, runs free but secured by a clip. Again you've got this that runs on the splines on the lay shaft, and the end gear comes off. Now in first gear, second and third, it gets transferred power from the main shaft because you've got your clutch on here actually driving. So I've disengaged that gear, so it's actually driving all the time. So when the engine's running and it's in neutral, it's driving this via the clutch, and this is fixed, so it'll spin the lay shaft, and first, second and third is transferred through the lay shaft back to the main, except for fourth gear. Now fourth gear engages direct, so as that slots in here, just engage it there like that, and then the whole shaft, the main shaft, is one drive, fixed drive there. Now because the lie shaft, if you look at it, there's a worm gear. Now that drives the speedometer. So the speedo obviously still has to work in 4th gear. So the lie shaft still turns even though it's engaged there and the drive is direct. But it turns this fixed one at the same time. This gear drives that, and as you can see it turns the lie shaft, so the speedo can still work as well there. But when it comes to putting the cases together, we'll go in much more detail, because the lie shaft, there's end float that has to be set between the 2 bronze bushes, and also the selector forks. Now I'll show you how they go in. This is upside down actually at the minute. It actually fits into the casing like that way. So the lie shaft goes on that gear there with that slot, and then the main shaft goes onto that fork, and there's the gearbox. And we'll actually see how this works once it's in the casing. Right, so I'll leave it for now, and what I will do, if you want a glimpse at the actual bike that this engine's going in, I shall leave the link to it just below. Right, so we'll leave it for now, and until we get the bearings and the seals, and then we can start putting it together. Right, I'll catch you in the next vid.